Well, let's get more on that story. We are now joined by SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, a good morning to you. I know that today, particularly a big day for the African National Congress, where we were expecting that they would have that NEC meeting last night, but it was moved essentially to today. What are we hearing about that meeting particularly?
This meeting will start at 2 o'clock this afternoon, where ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and President of the country will be fighting for his political future within the National Executive Committee of the ANC, a special NEC that has been called to discuss the Section 89 report on his burglary and theft of $580,000 in his own words at his Phala Phala farm instead of the $4 million said by Arthur Fraser. You'd remember that the high panel report said that the president may have broken his oath of office. The president may have broken Section 36, subsection 1 of the PRICA Act, in that he failed to report a crime that there was a burglary at his Phala Phala farm. The stage has effectively been set here at the Nasrec Expo Center, where the National Executive Committee meeting of the ANC will be taking place to deliberate on this Section 89 report. We have seen one ANC NEC member, Mr. Ramatlodi, who has arrived here at the venue. He is not currently gone inside. He was hovering around the venue where this NEC meeting will take place. We are anticipating to speak to ANC National Chairperson Gwere Mantashe at about 12 o'clock midday today on these veracity of these allegations and these findings by this high panel report of Section 89 against President Cyril Ramaphosa.
There is something to be said about the fact that this NEC meeting is taking place today in a physical setting, where last night it would have been a virtual sitting. And in fact, yesterday morning, SABC News, having spoken to Tony Ngeni of the African National Congress, who said that this meeting is better off sitting down together and looking each other in the eye. And I think that certainly speaks to the tone of the conversation going into this NEC meeting. I mean, talk a little bit about that, about the tone that you are hearing, Samkele, from the various leaders of the ANC.
The tone of the ANC leaders, some of them are very harsh, some of them are very stinging against ANC President, calling for the maximum punitive measure by the African National Congress, which is a resignation of the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa. As you can see, it is going to be a physical meeting here at the Nasrec Expo Center, where President Ramaphosa is essentially going to be fighting for his political future. You do also see that the likes of Sibongile Pesani have even come out and said that the ANC President will follow due process on these matters pertaining to Phala Phala, and that he will go every rigorous process of the African National Congress, and he will not take a decision in haste. He is consulting with various alliance partners. As of yesterday, you did hear the provincial secretary of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal, Beginkosi Mtolo, saying that the president must introspect, do the right thing, and do what his conscience tells him, and that he will not repeat the mistakes that were made in yesteryear, where the ANC defended issues belonging to the homestead of former President Jacob Zuma in Nkandla. So you've got a number of ANC leaders whom are saying the president must go as head of state, but you've also got a number of leaders of the ANC, your Ronald Lamulas, your Enoch Godongwanes, your Mondli Kungubeles, your Ronald Lamulas, your Gwere Mantashes, your Derek Honeycomb, your Oscar Mabuyanes, whom were leading those negotiations with ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and President of the country yesterday in Cape Town, in convincing him not to step down as the head of state, as he was anticipated to address the nation yesterday evening at about 6 o'clock, later on pushed to 8 o'clock, where it was anticipated that he would announce his resignation as head of state. But his political allies have essentially told him that he must hang tight. They are going to take the battle into the National Executive Committee of the ANC in order to fight for the political future of Cyril Ramaphosa, of the ANC, and ultimately of the country. You did yesterday also see that the rand was plummeting amongst fears, amongst uncertainty of the political future of President Ramaphosa.
You see, it's interesting that you talk about those consultations that he's having with some of the leadership within the African National Congress, Samkele. One wonders, though, in those discussions, what is being talked about the various options that President Ramaphosa really has, particularly within the ANC, right? This is an independent panel set out by Parliament, but within the ranks of the party, what are the various avenues that he could be looking at outside of his resignation?
Essentially, he could move and look at taking a leave of absence as the President of the Republic, focus on these particular matters pertaining to his case, remain as the leader of the ANC or President of the African National Congress. These are some of the options, but he's also not charged. You've also got a finding against ANC NEC member and contender for the presidency, Dr. Zwelini Mkhize, by the Integrity Commission, that he should step aside, whom he has also not stepped aside. So these are some of the issues that are pertaining to this particular issue of President Ramaphosa, as he is not yet legally charged by any institution. Yes, he is currently under investigation, or this matter is being investigated by the Hawks as per the charges led by Arthur Fraser, but there is no charge, or he's not been held by any court of law at this point in time. And those are some of the issues that the ANC and those who support President Ramaphosa will be looking at in saying that you've got a finding by the Integrity Commission against Dr. Zwelini Mkhize. He's not yet been charged. He's contesting. You've got recommendations and findings by this high panel expert report of 2 former judges and an advocate against President Ramaphosa. He's not yet been charged. He's not yet going through an impeachment process within Parliament. What are then the avenues that the ANC can use to hold the ANC president accountable, but also not dent the image of the party? You'd remember Gwera Mantashe speaking in the Free State about 3 months ago, saying that he protected former President Jacob Zuma for a period of 10 years on the virtue that Zuma was the president of the ANC, and if that office of the presidency of the ANC had collapsed, it would mean the ANC would have collapsed and the country would have been plunged into a political crisis. Gwera Mantashe saying he is of the same predicament now and the same position with protecting the office of the presidency and doing the same that he did to Zuma as he is doing now with President Ramaphosa, by defending him, but not the individual, but by defending the office in itself. We will be speaking to Gwera Mantashe in a sit-down at about 12 o'clock midday when he arrives here at Nasrec Expo Center.
That's certainly something to look forward to, and we'll be watching that closely, Samkele. I think if we just take a step back here and talk a little bit broadly about what the leadership issue is then for the African National Congress. We had yesterday playing clips here on air, our former President Thabo Mbeki essentially asking a pertinent question: what happens if the president is found wanting by this independent panel that is looking into the Phala Phala saga? And if that is the reality for the party, what then are the next steps that they take in terms of filling up that candidate list going into the elective conference? I think talk to us about that. But we are also wrapping things up. So talk to us about when we get the outcomes of this NEC meeting, Samkele.
It's not yet clear when this NEC meeting will conclude. It is starting at 2 o'clock this afternoon. It will go down until the early hours of the morning, or into right up until the night, or even the following day. We don't know when they will communicate those outcomes, but the ANC is facing an existential crisis and is also facing a leadership credibility crisis, because most ANC leaders find themselves dogged in allegations of corruption and all sorts of manner of wrongdoing within public office and within private business, some of them. So it essentially tells you that the ANC is facing a credibility crisis when it comes to its leadership. The ANC, in the words of ANC President, in a letter he wrote to ANC structures about 2 years ago, which sparked a huge debate between himself and his predecessor, former President Jacob Zuma, Ramaphosa said that the ANC stands as accused number one when it comes to issues of corruption within the country, as many ANC leaders are facing many and serious allegations. It also boils down to that comment of Bathabile Dlamini that all ANC leaders have their smallanyana skeletons within their cupboards. So that question by Thabo Mvunyelwa Zizi Mpegi of what happens if the high panel expert report finds that there is an question or answers that the president needs to provide when it comes to the burglary at Phala Phala, those answers to that question will be answered by this National Executive Committee of the ANC sitting at 2 o'clock this afternoon, especially after the various caucus meetings that have been held by the various factions within the ANC within the past 24 hours.
Yeah, Samkele, thank you so much for speaking to us. I want to squeeze one last one in here. The anticipation yesterday was that the president was going to make an announcement either at 6 o'clock, then it was moved to around 8 o'clock, and that announcement was not made. We had Vincent Magwenya coming out and saying, no, the president is not going to come out here. If we were to throw the bones and assume that President Cyril Ramaphosa is indeed resigning, right? Let's talk about what that procedure would look like. He would have to go through the NEC first to make that decision. Is that correct?
Organizationally, President Ramaphosa can't just go on national television organizationally. He can't just go on national television and announce his resignation. He would first have to inform the ANC officials. From the ANC's officials, a special NEC would then be called. Then the matter would be tabled within the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Organizationally, that's how the process would unfold. Then post that, an announcement would then be made. Hence, you saw with the resignation of former President Thabo Mbeki, a decision was taken by the NEC of the ANC. The leadership of the ANC, led by Kwere Mantashe, Jacob Zuma, went to inform former President Mbeki of the decision of the National Executive Committee. Former President Mbeki then went to Parliament to resign. An announcement was then made by the African National Congress. The same with former President Zuma when he resigned. The NEC took a decision. Ace Magashule, Cyril Ramaphosa went to go see former President Zuma. They informed him of the decision. Former President Zuma then had to make an announcement. Then you had the ANC Treasurer General Paul Mashatile going to speak to the ANC caucus. So it essentially tells you that there are organizational processes to be followed when these types of decisions are made, because you can't just plunge the organization into crisis. When the ANC last faced a resignation without a structure being informed, it happened with Mbazi Mashilowa post the 2007 Polokwane conference, when there was going to the formation of the Congress of the People, where he just resigned in Gauteng without informing the provincial structure, which was the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in Gauteng.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Well, we'll be watching closely as that NEC meeting unfolds at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And of course, that there, SABC News' very own Samkele Maseko talking to us about the ANC NEC meeting set to take place. And stay tuned to SABC News, because as Samkele has said, he will be speaking to the chairperson of the African National Congress, Mr. Kwere Mantashe, just after midday.